This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Right. There he is. How you feeling, my man? I hope you're feeling 1,000 times better than I do. That's for sure.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, man. Got a cold?
Yeah, no, I had a hot dog from a Dairy Queen on the way down, and I ended up, like the Exorcist bitch all last night. So yeah,
Paying a big price for your questionable decision.
Yeah, it was a really stupid decision. God, it was dumb. Oh, it was dumb.
Yeah.
It was dumb. Dairy Queen, you suck with your hot dogs, boys. Oh God. Anyway, so it is what it is. It's over, and some of the things that we talked about on the show, and one of our listeners nailed it, and he's old school, dude. And he didn't want the agent, I think, ratted this thing out, and he probably got pissed. And this is why he wanted to keep it under wraps. I don't believe the bullshit that Schefter put out that after talking with other teams, this and that. I think he was coming here the whole time. I think he was just old school, and he was like, "Man, I got a job to do here. Out of respect, I can't be talking about another job. I'm working for the Philadelphia Eagles right now." So, where do you stand on all of this?
I stand as only Vic Fangio knows, and the Dolphins know, and we may never find out. Again, because based on your hypothesis right now, then why is he okay with it coming out now? He still has a job to finish.
Because it's too late. It's too late already. It's been out, and it's bothering everybody, and everybody's asking, and everybody's picking him.
So what? He decided, okay, well, I'm pissed off that it leaked out this past weekend
because it allows the other teams to move on instead of them having to deal with a cloud that really is not there for them, but they're dealing with the questions and all that stuff. So it puts that to rest also, so everybody can move on. And so when Denver is interviewing somebody else for San Francisco, am I competing against Vic Fangio? Oh, no. That wasn't accurate. And I think that's what it was, that they had to kind of clear the air out. And think about this. I mentioned this yesterday. While they mentioned all these other teams, okay, so you broke the story that he agreed to the deal. So nobody broke a story that he was negotiating with Denver or negotiating with San Francisco? No, because there was no negotiations. If there were any negotiations going on, that Sean Payton would have released it. He would have given it to Jay Glazer or something, and to just kind of heat things up, because that's what Sean Payton would do, bro, because that's what his ego would drive him to do. So to me, the fact that we never heard anything else from other teams over the next following days after that broke, that told me that this story was always the Dolphins. It's just the old school guy wanted to take the old school approach, and I think the agent effed up. That's just me.
It's not impossible. It's also possible that the other teams did reach out to him. And at that point, he may have thought about it. I find, forget negotiating. I mean, at the point, I kind of find it hard to believe that Sean Payton wouldn't have called him and say, "Hey, how about us hooking up?" Or Kyle Shanahan, once DeMeco Ryans officially left for Houston. I find it very hard to believe that even if they didn't negotiate, that there wasn't some conversation there. So,
well, look at his statement. His statement says, "I will be accepting the job after the Super Bowl." So
that wasn't a statement by no. There was no statement by him. The report from Schefter was that he'll officially accept after the Super Bowl.
Right, and that's him telling people, "Hey, listen, same thing. I'm working still. When this is over, then I'll start the job with Miami." And to me, I think that's what ended up happening in all of this. I think, dude, Tom Pelissero is one of the most responsible reporters.
Without question, there's no question. That story was legit, that they had agreed to terms. There's no question about that.
Of course. I don't believe, and the old school Fangio, brother, you agreed with somebody. That's it. You gave him your word. I don't believe he was going to go back on his word. He just seems like that kind of dude. He just seems like an old school guy, that he just wanted to do things the right way. Respect the Eagles and the job and the money that he's making, because that money doesn't take away from his head coach salary, if I'm correct, from Denver, right?
I don't know
right?
what his contract was with Denver.
Yeah, because if you get hired as a consultant, I don't believe it takes the money away from the head coach. So he's still making his fat ass check from Denver, and he's making extra money from Philadelphia. So I think you want to be respectful to Philadelphia so they don't have to also deal with this mess too. To me, I just think we kind of jumped the gun here in the media on all of this, and then it became a whole mess. But anyway, all right. So
Well,
you did
I
an
mean,
article.
we jumped the gun because it was leaked out to somebody, and then everybody confirmed it, so that it was indeed leaked out and out there. So anyway, I think we're getting caught
No,
up.
I mean, I think we jumped the gun on the San Fran Denver stuff. I don't think there was that much to that. That's what I think, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Now, you wrote an article, some interesting stuff on Fangio's defense.
Mhm.
All right. So by seeing what he does, who fits and who doesn't.
Okay. You talking because no, we have I've had a few things on the side.
I know.
One story you're talking about with the scheme, I want to give credit where credit is due. That was my writer, my guy Dante
That's
Collinelli,
right.
who did a great
That's right.
job. So
That's right.
good
My
job
bad.
to Dante. And what I did today is I put out a whole year by year rundown of Vic Fangio's defense with stats, Pro Bowl selections, league rankings. Every time he's been either a defensive coordinator or his 3 years as a head coach with the Broncos, where we can assume it was his defense that was run. And the common theme there is more often than not, when he had great defenses, he had the big stud linebackers, whether it was Navarro Bowman and Patrick Willis with the 49ers, Roquan Smith with the Bears. When his first DC job was in Carolina as an expansion team, and he had some stud linebackers. He had Kevin Green. Eventually, then he had Sam Mills.
Sam Mills, right? Yeah.
And the Dolphins don't have that. So if we're looking, I'm kind of reverse answering your question because you're telling me like who fits. What the Dolphins don't have that this defense would seem.
You're answering it. You're answering indirectly, but go ahead.
Well, no, correct. That's one thing that they need to make it operate at full function is a difference making off the ball linebacker. And I'm sorry, the Dolphins don't have that on their roster.
No.
Along the defensive line, I think they're okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
No, I think that's the place that screams to me. I don't know that
corners will be playing more zone now, right?
Correct. And it was interesting actually. I put out questions for a call for questions for mailbag, and somebody asked me whether this could be good for Noah Benagani's career, and I would think he'd be somebody who would be a lot better in zone than he is in man, where he's a lot more susceptible to biting on the first move.
Yeah, that was Jamar Fletcher's thing. Remember? And Jamar Fletcher, they drafted a zone corner to play in a man-on-man scheme. And then they finally figured out that he couldn't make the switch to man-on-man. And it's funny because he then left Miami and made a career for himself for several years because he played in zone schemes like in Detroit. And so he was serviceable in some of those defenses, and credit to him. Look, man, a lot of times that's what happens to players. They end up in the wrong. Look at Mike Gesicki. The last couple of years, he's ended up with the wrong coach that doesn't really know how to use him or really want to use him or whatever it was. And I bet you now he and his agent will pick the right place where it'd be a more of a pass-oriented type system. And I bet you he thrives and has a monster year wherever he goes. And that is so key that you put players in the right positions to be successful, that they can do those kind of things. So you're right. Maybe Noah, I mean, listen, it's not going to hurt them to keep him all the way through training camp because he's under contract anyways. Sure. He just has to, this time he really has to earn the 53-man spot. That's all.
Sure. And no, and not one more note on Fletcher, where I think if we're talking like the worst Dolphin draft picks of all time, where it's not quite Deion Jordan-esque, but almost, that if you recall when the Dolphins picked Jamar Fletcher,
I know.
Not only did they pick him ahead of Drew Brees at the top of the second round, but also they picked him at a time when they already had two pretty decent starting quarterbacks named Sam Madison and Patrick Surtain.
I know.
So they got a guy who's a bad scheme fit when they have two stud starters at the position. Oh, and they have a need for a quarterback, and you got a great one there. So,
but was that the Jerry Wilson year? Is that what he was trying to replace? Was Jerry Wilson the guy that they kept torturing? Who was the slot that they kept torturing? That's why they had to get him, because you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me when Wanstead reached for Eddie Moore saying, well, we needed a special teams linebacker. And we're like, what? Mm-hmm. What? Yeah. Second round, you're taking a special teams linebacker, bro?
No, and I didn't know that much about Eddie Moorhead coming to the draft, and I knew the Dolphins were in trouble when in his post-draft press conference or conference call we asked Eddie Moore. We had Eddie Moore about his thoughts on the beginning, and he was like completely shocked he went in the second round.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, oh boy, not good.
Yeah,
there's reason to hope that maybe Noah. I don't know that it does a ton for X. I think X is better when he's right as a man cover corner.
But I think the good thing for the Dolphins is you're going to cut Byron this year, and next year you'll cut X, and X and his agent will know that, and X will have to come back next year super motivated because he's either going to play to try to talk the Dolphins into keeping him another year or two, or he's got to make a home somewhere else. So that's the one thing that I will say, no matter what scheme it is, I think X is going to find a way to play pretty well next year and find a way to stay on the field.
Well, he's going to be. Well, he stayed on the field this year. I mean,
he did this year.
The guy's props for playing. I mean, playing through a lot of things. So he's got to be right physically, and he wasn't for. I'd say a good.
You can tell. Come on, bro.
He wasn't a slow guy.
When I see X giving people space, I already know what he is already at that point. I know that's not him because he doesn't do that, bro. He gets in your freaking pocket and he takes the ball away from you. That's who he is. He's a stupendous athlete, and he didn't look like the great athlete that we've seen in the past.
Correct.
Unfortunately.
No, correct. No question.
So what do you think about the other guys fitting in the zone?
I'm of the opinion that one guy who should thrive because of the
Holland?
Javon Holland, yeah. I was expecting like a big jump statistically in his second year.
The injuries. The injuries screwed it up.
The injuries screwed it up. Maybe he was asked to do different things. I would expect in a zone where he can really play center field, and I think he could be in line. If he maxes out his ability, I think he could be in line for like a major jump.
I'm with you. 4, 5, 6 interceptions. Mm-hmm. I'm with you. As long as everybody stays healthy and he doesn't have to babysit everybody again, where he can pick and choose where to attack. How about Brandon Jones?
Well,
because Brandon Jones just started to get better in coverage last year. So now he's going to have to excel in coverage.
Yeah. I think if we're looking for guys where the scheme change hurts, it's Brandon Jones, because Brandon Jones was ideal for the attacking style,
right,
by Brian Flores,
blitzing, getting after the run game. He's
correct.
Yeah,
that's his game. Can he do it in this scheme? Sure, but I think I'm not sure we can expect him to be quite as effective, even without taking the rehab from his injury into consideration.
Yeah, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because the young man has only gotten better every year, and he does have the ability, and he was showing us that he was getting better in coverage last year. So maybe he takes another step in coverage, and he can really fill that need. But I'm with you. That is one that I think is going to be an issue, for them. The question is now, have you started to look where they're going to find that linebacker?
No, I haven't yet. When I start doing my draft research, I'm going to be looking at linebackers. I don't know that there's a ton that's going to be available in free agency. I haven't really looked at the list, but I don't think anybody jumped out at me. This is why, I'm going to go back to the Bradley Chubb trade at its merits, but I would have loved for the Dolphins to have jumped on Roquan Smith. Especially, and had they known they were going to wind up with Vic Fangio as their DC, I think
right. But they were going after another pass rusher, a different type of linebacker. So I get what they were doing. And by the way, the Agba injury, it was perfect timing. Actually, that acquisition, he didn't translate and play well.
Correct.
But hey, listen, you got Fangio now. He's played his best football under that guy, so that is a positive. That while you don't have a Roquan type of middle linebacker, you still have the kind of pass rusher that he likes to use too. So that part is, that's not a big deal there.
No, as long as he goes back to his peak Denver form, because that's the thing with Bradley Chubb's career is he's had some spurts where he's been really, really good, and then he's had some bit of a downtime, and he's also battled injuries. So that he's it's got to get over all of that. If the Dolphin defense is going to take the big step that everybody just seems to assume is going to happen because they hired somebody with the reputation of Vic Fangio.
Well, listen, I took it to another level yesterday. I told Dolphin Nation this is a really positive thing. because I think McDaniel did a solid to Josh. Like, he knew he was going after Fangio since last year. So he got rid of Josh right away because he already had a plan to replace him. And sure enough, he did. He's hung on to Crossman, who actually was the weak link, I think, out of the three, because I don't think he has a plan to get that guy yet. He doesn't have a target. So that's why he's still hanging on to Crossman, which he's not doing him a solid if he releases him in the next month or whatever. So now that you've added Fangio and you're paying him $4.5 million, you've got Mike McDaniel running the offense. I think it might be a little easier to recruit that special teams coordinator. That might be one of the better ones available out there. And maybe he's at a crossroad too. His contract's up, the coaching staff got fired, whatever it is. And that guy's going to want to come here, no tax state, owner that pays, and you're joining two excellent other coaches that are going to be able to handle their third of the team. I think you become a sexier destination, and it's easier for Mike McDaniel to even recruit a special teams coordinator that he may not even know.
Yeah, the question is who becomes available. You know, I had like somebody suggest to me it would be great if they got Darren Rizzi. Well, Darren Rizzi was made assistant head coach or associate head coach with the Saints last year. I mean, I love Darren Rizzi, and he'd be great. He's awesome, but why would the Saints let him go? You know?
Yeah.
So I don't know who's going to be available. So that would be, but you make a good point. Correct. They have all the pieces in place to attract, you know, somebody of a high caliber, but would that guy become available? And if he doesn't, maybe they run it back with Crossman.
Yeah, the part I got to plead ignorance right now is I don't know all the coaches that are available right now. I don't know whose contract is up here at the end of this month, because the coaches' contracts are up here this month. The personnel guys are in May. So I don't know whose contract is up, who's available, who's disgruntled. I don't know. I don't know. That's the one thing that I'd be lying to everybody out there to tell you I know who they can go after. But I just think they have a better stage for it right now. So that's actually pretty cool. All right. What are you working on over at alldolphins.com, my friend?
Well, as I mentioned, we're all over the Vic Fangio stuff with Dante's look at the scheme, my statistical breakdown, and I also mentioned the one logical name if we're looking at a new offensive line coach with a tie to Vic Fangio, with a tie to the zone blocking scheme, or also happens to be a Hall of Famer.
Who?
Mike Munchak.
Oh. Is there? Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Did you say that? Was there any connection?
He was Vic Fangio's O-line coach for the Broncos.
Oh, for Fangio. Oh, okay.
With the 3 years, there's no connection
with McDaniel.
God,
because Munchak was one of those guys like Wade Phillips. Like, I don't want him as my head coach, but I want him as an offensive line coach. I don't even want him as an offensive coordinator because he was too conservative. He runs way too much. That's kind of what I'm afraid of with Mario Cristobal in today's college football, that, you know, he's going to be too run oriented, and that's not what you do in today's college football. You got to be able to throw the damn ball and put up some, you know, chunk yards and points. While Munchak, that's a great call.
And if you consider, if we're going to play conspiracy theory here, the announcement or the report of Vic Fangio like deciding on the Dolphins comes out a couple of hours later, Matt Applebaum is fired.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting timing, to say the least.
Yeah. I thought Armando was so unfair in his article. He was like, well, the Dolphins have fired offensive line coach 9 out of 10 years. I'm like, bro, it's McDaniel. Don't lump all these other things that happened 9 years prior.
Well, but here's the thing, though. Big O is as an organization, the offensive line has been a problem for a long time. And part of the issue is they've had no stability whatsoever as a coach in that position, whether it's McDaniel or Brian Flores or Adam Gase before that. It's just
kind of
the last one who lasted more than 2 years. I mean,
kind of, but from what I'm understanding, Frank was doing a lot of coaching on the offensive line.
Correct.
So it wasn't really Applebaum. And I'm sure McDaniel was doing his share of 2 cents here and there because he knows offensive line too. Plus the Connor thing, you know, you guys unearthed that stuff in the offseason. Frank talked about him being a center. And so obviously he could pass that knowledge on, you know, to Connor. I I just have a hard time blaming anything that McDaniel's done to the prior coaches, especially the one that just came before him that fired 87 offensive coaches in 3 years. So to me, that's just I just thought that was unfair. If you're going to judge McDaniel, it's just 1 year.
You had to take
By the way, what
Sorry?
rookie coach hires an entire staff and nails it on every position? Come on, dude, please give me a break.
Man, are you protective of the guy? It's like it's actually quite admirable how protective you are of McDaniel and how you keep dumping on Flores.
Well, no,
but you're consistent.
You do know I kill McDaniel for his game day decisions, right?
Yes, you do.
I assassinate his ass for the game day decisions. Okay, all right. I just want to. I got to defend him with what I think is right, and I can't defend him when he can't get a challenge to week 18. I'm not defending that shit.
No, I
got to defend him when he's only been here 1 year and he hired one offensive line coach and he didn't like him. But the Frank guy worked out just fine. So at least he got one of the two right. He got Darrell Bevel and he kept him. I think that's great. He brought in Wes Welker. I mean, he's done a lot of good things on the staff. I just think it's a little extreme to just, and then he goes in and he's able to get Fangio. Come on, man. How do you not defend
I'm not dumping on him. All I'm saying again is they have not. I can't remember. I literally cannot remember the last offensive line coach who lasted 2 full seasons.
Well, one of them could have lasted if he didn't like cocaine.
And was it Jim Turner also in 2013 was part of the whole.
Good dude, by the way. Good dude.
Sure, great dude, except he was canned because of his part in Bullygate.
I know the Bullygate stuff, but he's a good dude, bro. It's a good dude. Ended up in a terrible situation.
Well, hopefully they hire somebody and he stays for a long time. And again, if it's just a title, really, if it's just a title in name only, and it's Frank Smith who's doing the actual coaching, then yeah, it doesn't really matter.
I mean, Applebaum did come from college, so he wasn't really an NFL guy. So maybe this was one of those developmental guys for him, and maybe that's what he has to do is find another one of those guys. But this time, maybe get an established guy here. And God, man,
or it's possible also that for the first year, McDaniel was like, "I'm going to be totally hands-on with the offense." Frank, you worry a lot that you fully concentrate on the offensive line and help me out a little bit with the offense. Applebaum serves almost as a pseudo assistant to Frank Smith for the offensive line. And in year 2, maybe McDaniel wants to scale back a little bit, give Frank Smith more responsibilities with the offense, which creates more of a need for a true hands-on offensive line coach. Just spitballing here.
And brother, if they hire Munchak, we got to take you out to dinner or something, because that's a hell of a call on your part. They're able to do that. All right, what do you got going on alldolphins.com, the place that every Miami Dolphins fan needs to bookmark? If they don't, they're not Dolphins fans. Okay, I know, but just
the Fangio stuff, the Mike Munchak stuff, and I'm going to have a mailbag this weekend.
There you go.
Part 1 Saturday, part 2 Sunday.
There you go. Play with his bags. Follow him on Twitter at Poupart NFL and catch his work there at alldolphins.com. Make sure you bookmark it. Have a great weekend. Have fun with your bags.
I always try to do that. Have a good one.
There you go. And by the way, EJD Construction, a proud sponsor of our program and, of course, of this segment here, and support the great sponsors that support us. EJD Construction, Eric does a phenomenal job. 305-433-4843. That's his cell number. So when you call, the owner is going to answer. All right? Or you leave a message and the owner calls you right back because he might be doing something, but that's directly with Eric. So call him 305-433-4843. You want to redo that home. You want to modernize that home. You want to gut it out. You had a fire. You need to remediate. You want to build a second floor. You want to add a new room. You want to modernize the kitchen. You want to build a funky man cave with TVs everywhere coming out of the roof and the floors and all that. Custom home construction. They do it all. Major home remodeling, you call EJD Construction, 305-433-4843, only Dade and Broward counties. Okay, this EJD only services Dade and Broward County. So from kitchen to bath, you name it, they do it all, folks. Shell construction in-house, that's how they keep the cost down, and that's how they save you money. 305-433-4843.
is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.